Why, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Josi podcast. We have another exciting guest episode for you today about a very intriguing topic, I have to say so myself, which is shadow work and moving through the fear of being seen. And who better to chat about this than Polly, who is a shadow work coach for women ready to step into leadership in their soul-led work. So welcome to the pod, Polly. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on.
Oh, I already have a feeling like this is going to be such a good chat. So let's just dive straight in. And probably like the obvious question I really have to ask you is, what is shadow work and why is it particularly important for women entrepreneurs and leaders?
So shadow work, I feel like you might get a slightly different answer from everyone you speak to. I feel like it's one of those. But to me, shadow work is, in a nutshell, the process of reintegrating, I suppose, lost parts of yourself and really making them work for you. It's about really delving into the parts of yourself that you may have repressed out of the fear of, being seen, out of the fear of being judged, and really seeing how they're an asset. But I really think another huge part of shadow work is kind of working through the more destructive parts of yourself that you may have picked up over time. And again, sort of working through those whilst taking the other things back on. It's very much, a case of revisiting some really uncomfortable things as well so that you can better understand yourself. You can't really do the process of shadow work without understanding why you are the way you are and, not shaming yourself and really accepting yourself. So, yeah, I feel like that's in a nutshell what shadow work is.
And how does it show up, especially like for women in business? Because that's obviously like your clientele was right as well, right?
Yeah. So for women in business, I feel like this goes back so long in terms of the reason that women do have the fear of being seen. I call it the witch wound. It's something that is kind of trending these days, is the term of the witch wound. But even further than that, we've had the fear of, stepping out from our tribe and stepping out and being solitary. But I think for women, especially, it's that fear of being seen as powerful or wise or magical or spiritual or whatever it is. So that can really, really show up more deep rooted than what we can actually recognize on the surface, because it's in our lineage and it's in our ancestry.
So it's almost like generational trauma then.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
And how do you work through this? Or maybe if we start with your journey, how was your own transformation maybe with this work, and how did you get to where you are today as being a shadow work coach and working with others?
Yeah, so I think my shadow work journey kind of started more recognizing the things that I had gone through in this life, and then learning more about my the mother wounds that I sort of had, and even further back than that, my lineage, my ancestry. So I used to always struggle with the fear of being authentic. And it really started from childhood, where I was sort of told it wasn't safe to be authentic. It wasn't safe to be you. And that's one thing that was kind of instilled in me and so many others. I mean, through childhood bullying and through our parents or carers, instilling certain things in us. And childhood bullying, quote unquote, sort of that it's just silly childhood bullying, is the one thing that I see come up for people time and time again that's actually ingrained this fear of being seen. It all starts from childhood, in my opinion. And it's interesting because we retain the most amount of information in terms of our, how malleable we are, and the things that we really remember from the ages of 7 and 9, which is super interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. So my fear of being seen and, my fear of being authentic really came from childhood. And then I also learned a little bit more about how my mother was raised and how my mother's mother was raised. And that fear of being a powerful woman has seemed to come up along the lineage. So me really going through that by starting, I suppose, with what I can see, and then working back and sort of looking. And I'm always still peeling back the layers, although I am a shadow work coach and I have gotten past that big hurdle. And it's interesting because I'm still peeling back the layers, but The only difference now is that I know how to deal with it. And I know it's like exciting to me now when I find out like almost like stuff that at the beginning of my journey I would have been like, oh my God, that's terrible. But now I'm like, great, it's another layer. So it still comes up, and we're always going to be peeling back those layers. It's never done.
Yes, that's literally something I also wrote in my book about. I call it like peeling the layers of the onion.
Yes.
Where you
exactly.
really go back like to your best self, but you have to work through all of these layers of limiting beliefs, of like shadows, of traumas, of whatever it is that's like holding you back from your essence. So the more you peel away, like obviously the closer you get back. I don't think it's like reinventing. It's not you transforming into someone new. It's just you coming back to who you are always meant to be, like your most authentic and your best self. And I also love that you say the part about like that it comes from the childhood. Like I can only agree with that, because for me personally, it's 100% the same. And like some examples just like include being told, oh, you're stupid, or you don't know shit, like you're just a little child, like you don't have an opinion, or how dare you dream of being an author, or how dare dreaming being maybe like manga designer, painter, drawer, I don't know. Like all of those things that just got belittled and like pushed down, and and then it really put like a damper on creativity, on expression, on self-trust, on confidence. So it's so important to recognize where that's coming from also in the childhood. But how would you say then from your perspective, because I feel like I might have, even though we have like some similarities in like mindset work and shadow work, I do think there's still like different layers to it. So how would you go about this, to peeling this onion and starting like getting into the shadow work?
I think honestly, creating safety is kind of the first part for me, and the mindset is a huge part of shadow work. But creating safety in the body is kind of the deeper layer to that, or one of the deeper layers to that. And it's kind of a difficult thing to explain when I talk about creating safety in the body. It's not so much always doing like the exercises or like the movement. It's more like creating safety, I suppose, in the nervous system and the deeper body, and sort of getting really vulnerable and getting really real with the parts of ourselves that remembers that it's not safe, or thinks it's not safe, because that's where it's stored. I mean, we can do the mindset work, but without shadow work itself being partnered up with that deeper work of, okay, we need to go like deeper into where it all started, it's almost like bandaging over sometimes. And the one thing that I see people do when they first get into things like, shadow work, or, manifesting and shadow work seem to go quite hand in hand, is that they will just focus on like, oh, just do my affirmations and I'll try and retrain my brain. And it just doesn't work, because we can, and don't get me wrong, I do think there is an element of like fake it till you make it, that you have to do a habit change. I really, truly do believe that. But without partnering it up with being super real with yourself about like why maybe you don't believe that's possible for you, rather than saying like, oh, I'm just screw it, I'm just gonna tell myself that it is possible.
Yeah.
Well, you got to go into why, and then you can. So yeah, it's really about starting to create safety, and I think it really does begin with like repairing the relationship with self, because we can't allow ourselves to be vulnerable like with ourselves if we're still holding guilt and shame and all of this judgment. So it's first, I think, about really getting to know like your own safety within self, if that makes sense first.
And how can we tell that we feel safe in our body?
I think one of the things that will be like coming up quite often if you don't feel safe to be vulnerable with yourself is that you probably will be brushing over a lot of stuff. You probably will be putting a lot of things to the back. It's honestly really, really hard to know when you do feel safe in your body, when you've been disconnected from your body as well. And most women are as well. I mean, I remember being brought up on a more surface level note, like not being taught anything about my body, not being taught to feel my emotions, not being, it's very much like you're going to grow up and you're going to be in this like almost like man's world and you're just going to get on. And it's like, but I don't want to do that. I have a sensitive soul. So that was something I had to really relearn, like coming into adulthood, was getting to know, how I really felt, and, on an emotional level. And that really links up with, feeling safe in your body. Is feeling safe just to be raw and vulnerable with yourself.
And what were like some main or like some starting kind of like exercises that you got into to practice that? Like if someone comes to you and is like, I have zero clue how to do this, like help me out. How can I feel safe with myself? And also just embrace being vulnerable and being myself again without being like shit scared about it.
Yeah. I think there is probably, in my opinion, is release the expectations a little bit of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and just allow yourself to be a little bit messy, and be a little bit like, yeah, no structure per se, but sometimes we need that structure. But I think when you try and do, like, for example, as I was saying, like the affirmations and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like the structure is like, I need to be feeling high vibrational all the time. I need to be feeling positive all the time. I need to be feeling like good about myself. But it's like, if we just release that and actually allow ourselves to feel kind of a little bit shitty sometimes, because we do need to feel like that
Yeah.
in order to get to the good bit, it becomes so much more deep. And journaling, I think, in terms of like the exercises, journaling is, of course, a favorite. But really, again, kind of relaxing on the structure a little bit and just allowing yourself to just pour it out. I think on my first journaling session, I was there for like 3.5 hours, just writing so much
Wow.
stuff. And I couldn't stop. I was just like, I did think it was a bit of like an ADHD hyperfocus as well, but I
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't stop writing. And yeah, it goes a long way. I think journaling is one of those really simple exercises that, if you can tap into it the right way, it's really useful for sure.
That is so true. And as you were saying, like that you wrote for like 3.5 hours, I was like, oh gosh, I did the same.
Yeah.
I've done that before, but I have it more like, so for me, journaling comes in waves.
Hmm.
So I will have days where I could journal literally every single day, and I might journal for literally an hour or longer.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I just journal for 5 minutes, or then I stop and then I come back to it.
Yeah.
And then when I reread my stuff, I'm so often like, I'm talking about the same things
Hmm.
over and over again, just like from different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I'm like curious how you see like the phrasing new level, new devil. Do you believe in that, or is it actually the same devil?
In terms of like, you have more things to work through the more you move up, or is that what that
Yes.
means?
Yeah. So basically, people are saying when you move up and you level up, you will
Yeah.
face a new devil, like a new challenge.
Mm.
But others are saying more around actually, it's not a new devil. It's the same one. It's because you haven't worked through that shadow yet, or because you haven't worked through that limiting belief yet. So it just shows up
Yeah.
differently.
That's interesting, because instantly I was like, yeah, I do think that, the more you move up, the more you potentially open yourself up to more things. I think it's probably a bit of both, now
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it. Because, yeah, I think that if you keep moving up, you probably, and not working through certain shadows, they are going to manifest in different ways. But I think, from my own experience, having worked through shadows and then leveling up and then facing a new, complete different thing, it's like, oh, there's another one. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was talking about, sort of peeling back the layers. I do think there's probably an element of both. I think, yeah, for sure.
I like that. I like that you said both, and it's not just like, no, there's only one devil, or like there's no only new devil.
There's many.
There's so many. And I do wonder, what is your perspective on, like, do you feel like they come like, or what role, let's frame it this way, what role does society play in all of this? And what kind of change maybe also would you love to see in society so the impact might not be as harsh anymore on women?
I think I'm a little bit of I'm very much a free thinker. So I often talk about society and, the government and everything in my
Mm-hmm.
stuff, which can be a little bit intense for some people, but it's something that I wholeheartedly believe is a huge issue in like everything. And if I don't talk about it, I just feel like I would be missing something really important. Um, I think society as a whole kind of doesn't want us to explore these deeper levels of ourselves because they don't want us to be free thinkers. They want us to be under control. And they especially want women to be under control. And this is not something new. This is something that women were persecuted and killed for, back in the witch trials, even thousands of years ago, it's certainly not new. I mean, women used to be jailed and killed for reading out Bible verses because it was a man's job, apparently. It's just bizarre. The control thing has been really there for quite some time. So I do think that, they don't want us to go deeper into who we are and do this inner work because it breeds, more thinking outside the box and, it's not what they want. So I think what I would kind of love to see in a perfect world is obviously that not happening, but think it makes it all the more fun and exciting for me to be rebelling against that. Like, I freaking love the fact that I'm doing work every day that would have gotten me burnt 300 years ago. And I feel like I'm doing my ancestors so much justice right now. And I just feel like I don't know, I suppose I wouldn't feel as exhilarated as I do doing my work if the world was perfect. So I think, although I'd love to see that not be happening, I also think there's so much power in it being that in that structure because we're the ones who get to encourage people to join our sort of free thinking, or their free thinking life and do their own thing. And I just think that's really exciting. I love it.
I love that. I literally had just a picture in my mind with your ancestors being behind you and just dancing and rooting for you and being yes, Polly.
I hope they are.
Go for it. Yeah. I do want to ask you as well. So regarding the fear of being seen and really embracing the true authenticity, how maybe if you have an example also from a client, maybe if you have your favorite success story or whatever it is, feel free to share that. But how do you see the difference also in clients from when they come to you first and then afterwards when they're okay, I'm ready to go into this on my own? Do you see a difference in how they're behaving, how they're showing up?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my best client success story will always be my first client. My first one-to-one client, it just was so magical. It was a magical, we worked together for sort of 3-4 months. And when she came to me, she was just so unsure of who she was. She was apologizing for everything, which is always what I used to do. She'd be like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm talking over you, or I'm sorry, I've said the wrong thing, or just really apologetic, about who she was had a lot of beliefs that were weighing her down, just sort of really unsure of who she was and feeling very ashamed of who she was. And by the end of it, we went through what limits she was struggling with, what she kind of has in her head as on the repeat. One of the things that I can't remember what it was. It was she was bad with numbers, or oh no, she's bad. She said she was bad at remembering things, and I was like, "You're not though. I haven't thought you're bad at remembering things at all. I haven't seen any of that being displayed in the whole time we've worked together. Where's that coming from?" And she's like, "Oh, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not." And so we traced it back, and that was that part of shadow work. And she was just like, "Oh my God, I get it now. I get it. It's not actually coming from me. It's coming from those beliefs that were instilled in me." And so we kind of went through all of that, a lot about, digging into who she really was. And she was like, "I'm actually quite weird. I'm a bit of a weirdo and I don't let that out enough." And, by the end of it, she was fully embracing her weirdness. And, I wasn't actually working with her as a spiritual entrepreneur or anything like that at the time. But by the end of it, she was like, "I am ready to put my gifts out there and do my work." And I was like, "Oh my God, okay, that's cool. Let's do that."
Go for it.
Yeah. And she was just like, "I'm ready. I'm so done with living under this, in this confinement of bullshit, basically. I'm ready." And that she really does inspire me even to this day, for sure.
That's so amazing. I love that. I love hearing those kind of stories because it's such a big difference from saying sorry for who you are to then being like, let's own my weirdness and make the best out of it, have fun, and start to also enjoy life. Oh, that's also what I love seeing, like with my clients. And one of my favorite examples is, it was just one session. I worked with her, I think, for like over a year, like 1.5 years. We had like a little bit of a break in between. But there was one session in particular where she like came into the session and she was like so bogged down. She was literally like slouching and just like hiding herself. And she was like, Josie, like, I have this opportunity. I don't know how to show up as an authentic leader. I don't know how to really, like, how do I find even like this inner voice and this essence? How do I connect to that? And again, we peeled away also like the onion, the layers of the onion, and we got to the root cause of it. And then we switched it. And when we switched it, she literally had like almost like a taster of what it was like to just be in her power, to be seen. And oh my God, it was so emotional. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we both were just like sitting there crying because we're like, oh my gosh, this is just so beautiful to see her suddenly standing in her power and being like, I want to be like this. I want to be moving. I want to stand up. I want to walk around. I want to connect with the people. I want to talk to them. I want to be
Yeah.
full of energy and I want to make it fun. And I was like, oh, that's you. Like, embrace it. And it's like so, so beautiful to see.
Yeah, and it is so emotional as well, because I just feel like it's all pent up, and then when it's released like that, it's like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
it's also terrifying. It's also
Mm-hmm.
really, really terrifying. And half of that emotion is like, oh my gosh, I've felt it now. Like, as you said, I've had a
Mm-hmm.
taste of it. And now I know I have no other choice but to put it out there. So we kind of again, our body kind of knows that it's like, okay, we're gonna play the long game with it, because there will be things that will keep coming up.
Yeah.
But I remember when I got made redundant from the last job I ever had in corporate, just before I went full swing with my own business. And it happened, and I was like, this is so weird. Like, I just like decided that I was going to really go full swing in my business
Mm-hmm.
anyway. Like, the timing was insane. And I remember, like, I called my mum on the phone and I was like, I'm so terrified. I'm so terrified. But then I started laughing and she was just
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like psychotically laughing. And she was like, are you okay? I was like, I'm just so happy. And she was like, you just said you were terrified. I was like, I'm both. I don't know what to do. So the emotion just like really does come out, and it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
It's a lot to work through, and
Mm.
especially if you have been, as you said before, like basically shielding yourself off these emotions and you haven't really experienced them, and then you start experiencing them, they come clashing onto you like, what the fuck am I supposed to
Yeah.
do with all of this? Like, it is a lot, but at the same time, over time you're like, just gosh, it's so much deeper. Like, life is so much more fulfilling, so much more meaningful, and yeah, beautiful in a way, right?
Yeah, it is. And I feel like it's such, when you kind of unlock the like secret, I guess, that you can have this life of being yourself, and even deeper than that, stepping in and being a leader and doing your work like that. It's just like, how did I not know this before?
Mhm.
And this is one of the things that, when I started doing my work, I was like, how has this been hidden from me my whole life almost? And, I was never around anyone who kind of encouraged it. And I was always told, like, oh, you're never going to be worth anything, more than
Mm.
like a crap job, basically, that's going to pay you minimum wage. I remember the day I left school, the teacher that had given me, like, I was not a well-behaved kid in school. I was branded the naughtiest kid in school, but I just couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear being in that world. It was just, I was over it. But I remember that teacher looked at me in the eyes, and on the last day of school, when I picked up my GCSE results, and he was like, you're going to amount to nothing in this world. You're basically a piece of shit. And I was just like, why don't you watch me? And I just walked
Yeah.
out, and that was the last thing I ever said to anyone. And yeah, I just feel like I definitely feel like we do our younger selves justice when we do step
Hmm.
into this, even though it's terrifying sometimes, even though it's a lot. Yeah, for sure.
But it's so worth it. And I better hope that teacher watches this.
Yeah, exactly. I
And
hope he
he's
does.
like, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said
Yeah.
that.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I mean, like just going into like what teachers have said throughout the years, also like to me, I feel like that could be its own episode. There's like so much stuff that it can be so harmful, and it's such a shame that teachers or other authority figures in our lives, especially the young lives, they don't realize the impact it can have, in a good or bad way. And if it's in a bad way, it's so unfortunate. But I'm so happy for you that you were like, nah, fuck that. And now look at you. Now look at where you are. So kudos to you, Polly.
I wish more people, more young people, really. I mean, one of my goals, over the next it's like 10 years, I guess, 5-10 years, is to really go in and really be a part of the education system in some sort of way. I'm not sure yet, but I would love to just encourage young people that there is another option. Is something that I feel really strongly about, because I feel like they're like kept in schools and basically they get lied to, and then they're like, well, why am I not good enough to achieve this academic stuff? And it's like, well, it's not that you are good enough. You're more than good enough. It's just that you're not going to do what they tell you to do, and that's fine. I really just I would love to see that change. That would be great.
I can already see you doing that.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah.
That's such a good vision. Okay. That brings us kind of like to the last section of this episode. So, as I pre-warned you before we recorded, I would love to ask you like a fire round of questions that you can answer with like a short sentence or one word. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Okay. Before we do that, tell me please a number between 1 to 10.
Oh, 7.
I love 7. Like so many people say 7. So you will get 7 questions.
Okay.
I feel like it's a magic number.
It is. It's a good number. I like it.
It is. Okay. Question number 1. What is the Polly way of living and leading your best life?
Oh, I mean, being yourself and not taking any shit, I think, is the first thing that comes to mind. Being yourself and not being someone else's version of you.
Love that. When shit hits the fan, what do you tell yourself to get through it?
Get used to it, because more shit will hit the fan in future. You may as well get the best out of it.
Enjoy it.
There's always something to learn.
Yeah, that's so true. Your key habit for success?
Ooh. Maintain, I think, the structure that you want to see in your life and not go off of somebody else's version of success. Yeah.
Yes, do it your way.
Exactly. And then she goes their way.
Exactly. That's why I called my book this way. What is your favorite book that you would recommend to everyone?
Oh, gosh. That's a tough one. Oh my gosh, I don't even think I can pick a favorite one. Oh my gosh.
You're also allowed to do your own one because you're writing one, right?
I am. Well, it would be that, but I can't even drop a hint back yet. Oh my gosh. I can't pick one. I actually can't pick one. I'm gonna have to actually skip that one because I can't pick.
Okay, that's fine. We skip that one. Okay, what is like the number one advice you would love to give the listeners?
Yeah, I think it's just got to be around doing it your way and authenticity. I think if you're ready to step into leadership, or you're ready to take your work to the next level, or even just ready to be living a little bit more authentic, just drown out the background noise a little bit and come back to you, even if that means just spending an extra 5 minutes a day chilling out with yourself. And I think it is important to talk about, come off of the phone, come off of Instagram.
Yes.
Because we're scrolling and we're being inspired or indoctrinated or whatever it is, we just focus so much on other people. So just give yourself some me time and start there.
I can only sign that. I personally love doing like think weeks where I literally go on holiday alone, and I would be basically offline most of the time. I might be reading books, go on the beach, meditate, and just do everything alone to just be with myself. And it's one of the best things you can do, I feel like.
I'm going to do that.
Love that. Okay, what is the theme song of your life?
Oh, what is the theme song of my life? Oh my gosh. Probably Oh, I don't know. Probably like, I don't know, probably like the Friends theme tune, to be honest.
I love that.
What would you love was gonna be that's the first thing that popped into my head.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good one. What is your main takeaway from this podcast episode?
I think honestly, talking about talking about more of the societal education stuff has made me really want to focus on that this week. You know, at the start of every week, and it's Monday today, so it's quite well. I sort of have like a theme that I want to focus on, whether that's on the personal side or a goal or sharing that with my audience or whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's going to be something around the like society / education system kind of stuff. I don't know. Work it out. I'll think on it.
I love that. Okay, so we need to watch out for some posts on Instagram then.
For sure.
Nice. Okay, last question. What is one thing that you want to unlearn?
Oh gosh, do you know this? I was actually talking about this the other day. It's kind of like I don't actively want to unlearn it, but sometimes, you know, when you're like awake, whether that's like, you know, whether you want to call it like a spiritual awakening or like just thinking different or whatever, sometimes you wish you could unsee it just to get a minute's peace in your head, because there's so much truth running around all the time, as wacky as it sounds. And sometimes you feel like, oh, just for a day, if I could just be naive again and sort of just wander free for a day without knowing the stuff that I do, that would be great. But in terms of like on a regular basis, one thing that I would unlearn, I don't think that would be any, honestly, because I think that, you know, we all go through so much shit, I guess. And, you know, it's really painful when we go through it. But I just think even if there was one thing that I didn't go through, I feel like it would affect where I am today. So nothing, I think. Yeah.
I like that actually. That was a really good answer. Thank you so much for sharing. And also, thank you so much, Polly, for being here with me today, for spending the time with me, and for also obviously sharing all of those nuggets of wisdom. And before we wrap it up, where can people find you? And is there anything else that you want to like put out into the space?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram, which is at Polly Pollock Official, or you can go to my website, which is www.pollypollock.com. And there you'll find my membership, which is kind of like the shadow work for beginners, I suppose. That's a monthly membership where we have a couple of live calls. And then I've got my one-to-one coaching and my group mentorship programs, which are for women who are, you know, your entrepreneurs, the creators, the people who really want to step into leadership and move through that fear of being seen. So I've actually got my first group, the first one in a while, my first group program of this one, which is going to be Shadow Alchemy, launching next month. So I stay posted for that. And then I actually still do have a slot open for my one-to-one mentorship for the summer. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Very exciting. Thank you again, like so much. I really enjoyed this chat. It was very fun. It was very sweet and to the point. So thank you. And to all the listeners, I shall see you or hear you or be with you, be in your earbuds or on your YouTube screen if you do look into your phone next week again with another episode. Have a wonderful week and see you soon.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye. I was watching reels and I just watched one where a woman asked men how they think women pee when they have their period. So that was very interesting.
What was the answers?
So most were like, well, you have to take it out, right? You can't do it at the same time.